We're back at it again with some CSS battles, and I'm going into these completely blind. I've never before seen any of these challenges. There's no prep work, so you can see my exact thought process that I go through when trying to tackle these different CSS problems, and you can see what I do when I run into problems, how I debug, and so on. Welcome back to Web Dev Simplified. My name is Kyle, and my job is to simplify the web for you so you can start building your dream project sooner. And the very first challenge we're doing is called Newspaper, even though to me it looks a lot more like a castle, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to link all of these in the description so you can try them yourselves. And for this one, I really see, when I look at this, a lot of use cases of either grid or flexbox. You can really do either one, but I think in our case, flexbox is going to make the most sense because we have a lot of things that are evenly spaced out from each other. So flexbox with the gap property makes a lot of sense. So let's first go ahead and define what our structure is going to look like. We're going to have a div that's going to be for stacking all of our different elements on top of each other. So we're just going to say class, and we'll just say wrapper. It doesn't really matter. And then inside of here, we're going to have a div, which is this top row. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different elements inside of it. So we'll just say class top row, close off that div. And inside of here, we're just going to put 6 different elements. They don't even need any content inside of them, so we can just close them off. So we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we can go ahead and style this real quick. So first of all, I need to get the style for my body. So we'll say that the background is going to be this color right here. Paste that in, and now we at least have our background color in place. The next thing I want to take a look at is our top row. We can come to this wrapper later, but for now, we just want to focus on this top row, top row like that. And we're going to do a display here of flex, and we're going to have a gap. I'm not really sure what the gap will be. We'll just say for now 10 pixels. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into here and I'm going to say top row, and I want to get all of the different divs directly inside of there. Normally, if I was writing real world CSS, I would give these classes, but for this particular use case, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to have to give them a background, which is this gray color. We're also going to give them a height. We're just going to say the height is 100%, and we'll say here that the width is going to be like 20 pixels or something like that. And if we go ahead, I'm not seeing anything show up on the screen. Let me make sure I had this right. Top row, that is correct. Top row, oh, of course, I should probably give this a height of like, let's say 30 pixels. And now we can see that these elements are showing up. They are far too small currently. I think actually an easier way to do this, instead of giving these a height here, yeah, that's fine. Okay, but instead of doing a gap here, I can just say justify content. Whoops, justify content space between. There we go. And then I can specify exactly what the width of each one of our different elements is going to be. For example, it looks like they're probably closer to like 30 or maybe even 40 pixels. And of course, we need to add some margin. So that's going to be on our wrapper. We'll say wrapper, margin, and we're going to have a margin of like 20 pixels and 10 pixels, something like that. I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, it looks like it needs to be closer to 20 on the top. That does look like it lines up about right. And the left side looks like it's pretty close, maybe just like 1 pixel off, like 19 pixels or something. Okay, maybe it was 21 pixels. Yeah, that looks like it's pretty well lined up. It's actually a little bit too big, so maybe we'll go with 22 pixels. There we go. That looks like it lines up perfectly on the different edges. Now we just need to make these the right width, because right now, actually it looks like they are the right width. I think I have too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in mine, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So delete one of those. And now they are the exact same correct size. We just want to give them the correct height, which looks like it's probably about 40 pixels, maybe 45 pixels. 46, 47, 48, 49. Looks like it's exactly 50. So that lines up perfectly. We can even put this diff mode, and if you see that there's essentially no gray up here, it's just a solid black square. So that means we essentially have nothing different right there, which is exactly what we want. Let's go back to our normal mode. Now the next thing that we want to work on, now that we have these two particular sections done, is going to be working on our next row. So we can just say our next row is just going to be essentially a single horizontal line. So we can just give this a simple div inside of here with a class of line, because we're going to have a couple of these. So I might as well add a class to it, because we're actually going to have 2 of them, which just have a little bit of space between them. So for our wrapper here, I'm going to give this a display of flex as well. And for our direction, I'm going to change it to column. Just like that. There we go. And on this one, I can actually just, I think, do the exact same thing. Justify content space between. There we go. And now I believe if I just go ahead and style my line, so we can say dot line, background is going to be that gray color, just like that. And we can give them a width and a height. So width is going to be 100%, and height is like 10 pixels or something like that. Now, right now it's all scrunched together because we don't have our wrapper actually covering all of the space. So we'll just give a height of 100%. And that does look like it fills the entire space, but it's not actually quite working exactly like I want it to. And that's just because of some interesting stuff. I'm not going to worry about doing this with a flex or with a justify content. I'll just make it more difficult than it needs to be. We'll just come in here with a gap of 10 pixels. And actually, 10 pixels looks to be exactly perfect for the gap, and our height is perfect. All we need to do is make it so that one of our lines has some space in between it. So what we can do, actually really easily, is just add in a div, just like that. And that div is exactly 10 pixels of space because we have a 10 pixel gap. So it's kind of cheating, but it works just fine for our use case. Otherwise, you could add a margin to one of the lines. So the reason I decided not to go with the flex of a space between on this one is just because I don't want to deal with trying to make sure this is exactly the correct height. It's just more work than I want to deal with. Now, the next thing we need to do is to work on this bottom section, which is actually relatively straightforward. So we'll come in here with a div. Class for this one is going to be bottom section. Close that off. And inside this bottom section, we essentially have 3 different compartments. Now, again, you can do this with Flexbox, you can do this with Grid, you really do it however you want to do it. So we'll come in here with a div. This one is going to say vertical stack. Close that div off. And inside of here, I just need to have a bunch of divs. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different divs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. Let me indent those. Perfect. So now what we want to do is we can come in here with our vertical stack. We'll add some styling for that. It's just going to be a display of flex. It's honestly going to be pretty similar to what we had for our top row because we're going to be justifying our content with space between. We're going to give them a specific height here. Actually, we don't need to give this a height. And then we can come in here and we can say that we want the flex direction to be column. There we go. So that way they can stack vertically between each other. And then all we need to do is just get the items inside of here. So vertical stack, get each individual div inside of there. And again, we're going to do pretty much the exact same thing we did inside of here. But instead of the height being 100%, I want the width to be 100%. And the height is going to be 10 pixels because that's how big we know that those lines need to be. Now again, doing this justify space between doesn't really work like I want because I don't have the height hard-coded perfectly. So we'll just come in here with a gap, and we know this should be probably 10 pixels, and that does look like it lines up perfectly. Now all we need to do is to make sure that we have a second vertical stack. So I'll minimize this down, copy it, paste it. So now we have 2 vertical stacks. Now for our bottom section, we want to add a final div inside of here, which is just going to be called door because I think it looks like a castle door, even though it's supposed to be a newspaper. So now all the way down here, we can go bottom section, and we can say that we want to have this be a display of flex, and we can say, make sure I got all that correct here, bottom section, yep, that's going to be a display of flex, and we're going to have a gap of 10 pixels again. Now it's interesting that all my content has disappeared when I gave that a display of flex. I'm not 100% sure why that is. I believe it because it has no width. So if we go all the way up here, we have our wrapper, which is using a flex column. Let me just make sure my align items is set to stretch, even though I believe that is the default value. Okay, that looks like it didn't do anything. Let's go ahead and also see if specifying a width of 100% on here does anything. Obviously not what I wanted. So the next thing that we can do is we can just do a quick inspect on this to see what's going on. So we can see here, I have our div, content inside there. Of course, it's going to be a little bit difficult because it's doing a bunch of iframe stuff, but we can get inside of here and we can look at our bottom section, and it looks like our vertical rows, they have no width. Okay, that's our problem. So we can go all the way down to our bottom section, and we want to make sure that essentially each one of our sections is growing to fill the entire space. So for each one of our vertical stacks, we can have a flex grow of 1. There we go. And then same thing in the middle section, we can just give that a specific width, and that's going to work fine. So I think I just called it door. Make sure we get the correct background color. I'm going to paste that in there. We're going to specify a width of like 200 pixels. And it looks like that's a little big, so we'll try 150. And we'll put it in diff mode. So again, it looks like it's a little bit, let's see which way we need to go. 60, 75 is probably what it is. Well, maybe 70, maybe 80. Nope, too far. 74, 3, 2. Okay, 172 pixels is exactly how wide that is. Kind of an interesting width, but it looks like we have everything correct. And if we click submit, we should see we get a score that is going to be 100%. Just give it a second here. It's taking a really long time. But again, this is something that was a perfect candidate for using Flexbox because everything is stacked inside of these evenly spaced out grids. We got a score of 600, and if we look, you can see it's a 100% match. Now, if I was to go back and actually change this code slightly, what I would essentially do is instead of using this margin here, I would change this to be padding, and then by doing that, I could also change the box sizing to be border box, which is pretty much how I always work. So we'll say border box like this. And now that allows me to essentially say I want something to be 100% height, and it should actually fill the entire container. Things aren't going to work perfectly because I haven't changed all the rest of my code, but that may make it work where I can say height 100% and so on, and it would work a little bit better. But for now, we'll just change it back to what we had before, and that is, I think, good enough for solving this particular problem, a relatively easy one. Now, this next challenge is one that looks really complicated if you just look at the picture, but just by looking at this for a few seconds, I realized that really all this is 2 circles on the right side plus a square, and on the left side, it's just a square plus 2 more circles. So it's actually really easy to make this particular shape. Hopefully I'm not jinxing myself by saying that, but I'm gonna go ahead and try to create this. So very first thing I wanna do is get our body the right color. So at least our body is going to be correct. And then we're going to have essentially a div, and this is going to be for our wrapper. There we go. So we can come in here, dot wrapper. We don't need to worry about any width or height or background or anything like that. Actually, we'll just come in here with a width of 10 pixels, height 10 pixels, just so we can see it. Red, there we go. So at least we can see what's going on. And I essentially just want to make everything in this container centered. So let's say display of flex, justify content. There we go. In the center. Of course, our body, I want to have no margin on it. And we're going to align our items in the center, just like that. And then we should just be able to say here, our height is 100 VH, width is 100 VW. And hopefully that should actually align the content properly. Maybe we have to put that on our body. Looks like that's not quite doing what I expect, and it may be because of how this is working inside the CSS stuff. Let me just take a look here. Height 100. Maybe we have to put something in here. So let's just put a div test. There we go, because I actually have height and width defined twice, which is obviously not super smart. So let me get rid of my background color. There we go. And we can say background is red, height 10 pixels. With 10 pixels. There we go. It's dead centered, which I think is exactly where this particular thing is. So now we're going to have 2 different squares that I'm going to stack side by side. So I'm just going to copy this. Again, 2 squares stacked side by side. We're going to have this one called left square. And we're also just going to give it a class of square. And that's this one down here is going to be right square with a class of square as well. There we go. So we'll say, let's just do all of our styling for all of our different squares. We need to give them a specific height and width. I'm guessing it's going to be like 200 or something like that. Actually, that's quite a bit too big, maybe 100. Okay, it looks like that's not big enough, so we'll try 150. Too big, so it's probably 125. That's still a little bit too big. 124, 3, 2, 1, 0. Put it in diff mode. I think that's about the right height. We'll leave it at that for now. And then for our width, since it's a square, they should be exactly the same width. And we should see, yeah, that fills essentially the exact same size of our shape, which is exactly what we want. Now, obviously, we don't want the background color to be red. Our left square, we want to have this purple background color. So we'll copy that over, just like that. And for our right square, if I can spell properly, we want it to have an orange color. So we'll copy that over. There we go. So now we at least have our 2 shapes, and if I put it in diff mode, the only thing that's not correct is the circles in the middle. Now again, these may look like rather complicated circles to create, but they're really not that bad. The first thing I want to do is I want to hide the overflow on each of our squares. So we'll say overflow hidden, and I also want to position this relatively because I'm going to absolutely position my circles inside of here. So let's go ahead and we're just going to create a circle. I'm going to have 2 different circles that I'm going to create. We're going to say div class. We're going to have circle. We'll make this one a small circle, just like that. Close off that div. And then we're going to have our large circle as well. So large circle. Now let's go ahead and work on styling these out. So for small circle, for now, I'm just going to change the background to red. There we go. And if we look at the small circle, the height and width are essentially the exact same size as our square. So we can say height 100%, width 100%, border radius 100%, and now we have a perfect circle inside of our left side, because that's where I put this particular one. So our square here needs to be that blue color. So we'll change the color for now. We'll say background is going to be that blue color, and all we need to do is just move it downward essentially half of its height. So we could just say top is going to be 50%. Actually, we don't need to say top. We can do this really easily. We can just say translate 50%, and we want to do 0, 50%, so it moves itself down, and we don't even need to have position relative on here. It already moved itself directly into place because all we're doing is moving this down by half of its height. Now we can do the exact same thing for our large circle, and large circle is going to be pretty much exactly the same. I'm going to copy all this over, but our height and width are now doubled because, as you can see, our circle, a quarter of it fills up the full height. So obviously we need to double the height to get to the entire full circle. So I'll say height and width is 200%. Our background color is this color right here. There we go. And now for our translate property, I don't even think we actually need to move it. So I can completely remove that. And let's make sure that our large circle is right there. It looks like large circle, background red, height, width, 200%. This should be showing up on our screen, but I don't see it anywhere. Let me see, background red, yeah. Oh, I have background on here twice, which I don't need. Same thing here. Let's just inspect our page to see where that circle is showing up, because I believe it should be there. So let me just dive into all of here, the iframe, document, body, div. Okay, so our large circle is, oh, duh. Okay, I will need to do these positioned absolute because I want them to stack over top of each other. So that was kind of dumb on my part. Position absolute. There we go. And let's make sure that we have our square being a position of relative. And then all we need to do is just put position absolute on this one as well. Perfect. That looks like it's working. It is overflowing. Oh, no, it's not overflowing. It's because this square on the right-hand side is the exact same color. So if I put my diff mode on, you can see this left side is correct, but unfortunately, our small circle needs to render over top of our large circle. So now if we look at the left side, it's entirely exactly the same. Now I want to do the exact same thing, but for our right side. So we have our large circle and our small circle, but I need to change the colors and positionings. So we're just going to say right large, and this one is right small, and we'll do the same thing up here, left large, and this one is left small. So all I want to do is just come down here, left small, and left small is going to have these particular properties. So I'm going to paste that into our left small one. And for our right small one, we just want to move it to a different spot. So right small, it's going to have a different background color and a different translate. So the background color on this one is purple, so let's copy over the purple color. And to translate this one, I want to move it essentially 50% in the left direction. So we'll just say negative 50%, and boom, it's now moved itself all the way over there. Now we can do the exact same thing with our left large. And our left large is just going to be these properties right here. And then we can do our right large, which again is going to have a blue color for our background, just like that. And of course, I copied the wrong thing. Our border radius can stay up there. So for this one, we want to essentially just move it by saying that our translate is going to be, I believe, negative 50%. There we go. That got us in the exact spot we want. And if we put on diff mode, you can see they're exactly the same. So let's submit this real quick when I talk about essentially what I did. Really, all I did is I created two squares side by side, and they're the exact size that I need to fit this particular section. And then looks like our score is not quite a perfect 100%. We have 99.9. I don't really know what would be wrong with this other than that maybe my height is supposed to be like 119 or something. We'll try that real quick just to see if it makes a difference. We'll resubmit, but it doesn't really matter. Essentially what I was saying though is I created two squares, and then inside of each one of these, I noticed that the circles were exactly proportional to this square itself. It was either going to be this exact shape, one full width of the square, or double the width of the square. So I was able to create these circles based on the square size and then move them around accordingly. Now it looks like that wasn't quite correct, so we'll try 121, submit that again. Hopefully this time it'll show us a perfect 100% match, but if we don't get a 100% match, this is close enough for my particular use case. We'll go back to 120. Even though it's not 100%, 99.6, I cannot tell a difference, and even with the diff tool, I really cannot tell a difference, so I honestly don't know what is particularly wrong with this. Overall, I'm not concerned though. I feel like we still created the shape exactly like it wanted us to, and we were able to kind of learn how we could use these circles in really interesting ways. Now, the last challenge that I want to do is going to be this cornucopia style thing. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of different ways that I see this that you can tackle it. You could do a lot of what we did in the last one where we created those circles based on creating squares and then having the overflow hide particular portions of it. That'd be one really easy way to do that. And another way would be using CSS borders to create triangles, but instead of creating a triangle, to round those triangles. Now, I think the triangle method is much more difficult. So what I'm essentially going to do is just try both of the different ways of doing things to see how they work, and also so you can kind of see the two different ways that I would think about doing this particular thing. So first of all, let's come in here with our body, and we'll say that their background on this is going to be that yellowish color. There we go. So at least we essentially have half of it already done, if that was how easy it worked. Next thing we want to do is get this in the dead center in this particular position. I think it's dead centered. I'm not 100% sure, but it doesn't really matter too much. I first want to remove my margin from the body. I find that just messes up things having that margin on there. And the next thing that I need to work on is to create these particular shapes. So I'm just going to create one of the shapes to see how it works. So we're going to say that this is going to be it's actually a quarter circle. There we go, quarter circle. Contour circle. There we go. And the first one I'm going to do is show you how to do it with a square, because this is probably the easiest way to do it. So we're going to give it the width and the height that we want is going to be 100%, but instead of giving it a background, I'm going to give it no background. I'm going to say overflow is hidden. Now to let you see exactly what's going on, I'm going to say we're going to have a border of like 2 pixels solid black, just so you can see the outline of this particular shape. And we'll also just give it some margin for now so we can see what this looks like. So there we go. We have our black outline showing up on our thing. And what I want to do is I want to take our quarter circle, and I want to get the before property. After property would work just as well. We'll say it's going to have some content inside of here, and then I just want to position a circle inside of here. So we can say width 100%, height 100%, and actually, since we want this to be a quarter circle, we're going to need to do 200%, again, because our circle is twice the size of our box. And let's give this a background, for example, of red. Also, we're going to give it a border radius of 100%, just like that. I'm going to do position absolute on this. And for this one, a position of relative. There we go. So now you can see we already have a quarter circle showing up. And if I remove the border, you can see it just gives me a perfect quarter circle. And if I wanted to move this quarter circle around, all I would need to do is use my translate property. For example, negative 50% here is going to give me a quarter circle going the other direction. I could do a upwards 50%, or actually negative 50% to move it up that way. And if I did negative 50% on both, you see I get that quarter circle in that particular direction. So this is one really easy way to create these quarter circles with almost no effort at all. So we could obviously go through and just use this quarter circle method for every single one of these, because literally all of these are just quarter circles, but I want to try both of the techniques. So I'll have 2 different ways of creating a quarter circle. This one we'll call quarter circle 2. So for quarter circle 2, I'm just going to comment out the first quarter circle for now, and we're just going to copy down this code because we want it to be relatively similar between the two. So we'll have quarter circle 2. We'll just use it down here and up here. We'll keep the same, and then we'll call this one quarter circle 2. There we go. So right now it'll look exactly the same. And for this one, I won't actually need this before element at all, so we can completely get rid of that. And that's because I'm going to be using purely borders on this element to make my quarter circle shape. So I haven't done this for quite a while, so I'm going to have to see if I remember how to do this. But I think what we want to do is we want to have a border. Let's just say 2 pixels solid black. Actually, let's make it quite a bit bigger. We'll say like 20 pixels solid black, just like that. And I want to get rid of my width and my height, I think. So we'll say width of 0, height of 0. And then I can essentially make some of my borders completely transparent. So what I'll do is I'll say border is going to be 20 pixels solid transparent. There we go. And then I want to say border left color is going to be black or something like that. There we go. So now you can see we got a perfect triangle showing up. And if I make this a little bit bigger, you can see we have a perfect triangle. Now to turn this into a quarter circle, all I need to do is just add a border radius, I believe. So we'll say border radius is going to be 100%. And there we go. Now we have a quarter circle that is essentially rotated by 45 degrees. So if I rotate 45 degrees, you can now see we get a perfect quarter circle. And if I rotate it by essentially another 95 degrees, so we'll do 135 degrees, we get the next level of the shape. If I did 225 degrees, we get the next level. And then obviously if I did like negative 45 degrees, we get the other version of the quarter circle. So this is just another way that we can make these quarter circles relatively easily. And also I could just change which one of my borders I have the color set on. And again, that'll change which direction this is coming from. Now this one is going to be much more difficult to place exactly where I want it to be because essentially I have a quite large shape. If I change this back to black, I have a full circle, but I'm only positioning 1/4 of that circle at a time. So this one I think is more difficult to get the position of it correct, but it's another challenge that we can do to create these different quarter circles. So I'm going to use both of these different techniques for our quarter circles throughout our entire application. So we'll come up here, we'll comment this other quarter circle back in. We probably need to put them inside of some type of wrapper. We'll say wrapper, just like that. We don't actually maybe need this, but it'll be a little bit of a nice thing to have. So then I can say dot wrapper, just like that. And we can say, for now, I want to give it a size. So we'll say background red. Width is going to be however wide we think this thing is, probably like 300 pixels. And maybe not quite that big. We'll try 250. And for the height, we'll do 250 as well. We're not really sure exactly how big this is. Actually, it's definitely not 250 tall, maybe 150 tall. And now I can essentially position this in the dead center of my screen. So we'll come in here with a top of like 50 pixels, and I'll position this absolutely. There we go. And it looks like it needs to go down a little bit, so we'll try 75. That's way too far, so we'll try 60. That's exactly perfect. You can see it's essentially exactly lined up. It maybe needs to be 61. Yeah, that looks like it's pretty well exactly lined up. We'll try 61. And then for the left, let's line up our left-hand side of this. This is maybe like 100 pixels. That's actually way too far. 75, 60, 55, 56. Yeah, it looks like 56 is perfect. So now let's just go ahead and get the width and the height of it correct. So our height is a little bit too short. We'll try 170, 80. 180 looks like it's a slightly too big of a shape. So we'll try like 179, 178. Yeah, it looks like 178 is about right. And then for the width, we need it to be a little bit bigger. So we'll try like 275, 290, a little bit too big. We'll try like 88. It looks like 88 is pretty much perfect. So now I can essentially position everything directly inside of this container. So let's do our first quarter circle. We have our quarter circle right here. And this one is going to be our green one. So we'll call it quarter circle green. And maybe green is not the best name, but it doesn't really matter. We'll say quarter circle. Actually, I just called it green, I believe, right? Yeah. So all we need to do is position this in the correct location. So here we go. We have our quarter circle before. Essentially what I want to do is I want to take this translate property and I want to take this background property and I want to put them directly inside of here. And actually our width and height are also, no, the width and height are going to stay in there. All we need to do is this translate property and this background color, just like that. And then also we want to make sure our width and height is going to be inside of its own. So here we go. We have our width and height for determining how large it is. And then this is going to be determining our location for where this is going to go. So let's make it green. We'll come in here with that green color. And what I want to do for our width and height, turn it into diff mode real quick. We actually have the translate exactly perfect, I believe, because we want it to be that shape, just like that. So now what I want to do is I want to position it absolutely. We'll say that our right is 0, just like that. And we essentially just want it to be a full 100% height. So we'll say height is going to be 100%, just like that. And our width should just be, or actually we can say aspect ratio is going to be 1:1. That should hopefully make it so the width is the exact same as the height, but it looks like something wonky is going on. It's not quite working like I expect it to. Let's see here. I'm going to inspect this element just to see what's going on. Again, we'll just have to move this way off to the side so we can see what's inside of here. Go into the iframe document. It's kind of annoying we have to do all these different levels, but I just want to look at what this particular element is. So here we go. We have our element right here. So it's 100 by 178. So obviously the aspect ratio is not being maintained. So that's clearly a problem. Aspect ratio 1:1. I'm not sure why that's not working, but we do know exactly how tall this is. I mean, we've defined the width, the height exactly up here. So we might as well just use that value. I don't like it as much, but it'll work fine. So we'll just come in here, hard code those different values in. And now we have that shape inside of our cornucopia. We obviously need to remove the margin on here, and now it's directly in the right place, and it does look like it fills the exact section we want it to fill. Now I'm going to get rid of the red background color because we don't need that anymore. I'm going to move this green down here as well. There we go. So wherever I have that red background color, get rid of that, and now we have that in the correct location. So now let's go ahead and work on quarter circle 2, which we'll call the red one. So we'll copy over that color, dot red. And for this one, all we need to do is just take this particular property, move it down to here. There we go. And we're going to want this one to be maybe the left side border. I'm not really sure. We're going to have to play around to figure out which border is the right one. Nope. Maybe it's the top border. Nope, of course it's the last one I tried. There we go, the bottom border. That is the one that we particularly want right here. And I believe we don't really need to change much else. Our rotate value we can keep the same. All of this, we don't want a margin, so we're going to get rid of that. And I don't think we even need the overflow hidden. We can get rid of that. So all we need to do is just put it in the correct position. So we know our right value is going to be 178. So we can say here, right is 178 pixels. Position absolute. There we go. That looks like it's not going into the correct position. Let me make sure I'm doing this correctly. Quarter circle 2 is going to be red. Positioned absolute. Right is 178 pixels. Oh, and again, this is why this one's going to be much more difficult to position, is because we have a full circle here. So I need essentially to subtract whatever the width of this particular circle is too. So let's specify what our width is going to be. I'm not really sure how big these are. It almost looks like it's essentially whatever the remainder is. So the difference between 178 and what is ours, 288. So it looks like it's probably about exactly 90 pixels wide. So we'll say 90 pixels. Height is 90 pixels. There we go. Actually, I'm sorry, that should not be the height. That should be our border width, 90 pixels. There we go. Get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. So that actually should change our border width properly. Now all we need to do is we just need to take our right property and subtract essentially our border width from it. So we'll say calc here, minus 90 pixels, and there we go. That does put it in the exact right location, even though it looks like it's moved down a little bit. Not 100% sure what is causing it to be moved down. Also, it's not the right size. It's clearly not big enough. So let's put on diff mode here. We'll make it a little bit bigger, 110 or 100. We should probably put this into a variable. Border width. There we go. We'll say 100 pixels. And then we'll specify right there and right there. So that way if I change this, it changes everything. Make sure I put my semicolon in place. Oh, it's because it's moving it down by that amount too. Oh, interesting. It's because of our rotate. We're rotating. So we need to change where our rotate origin's at. So like our transform origin would need to be like bottom center or something. Nope, clearly not that. Top center, right center, left center, or maybe it's going to be like top left. Nope, that clearly moved it into the wrong spot. Bottom left, bottom right, top right. It's still not 100% working. So I think this technique for positioning is way more difficult than we want it to be. I mean, obviously this other technique was way easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to completely get rid of quarter circle 2. We're going to pretend that doesn't exist. It's way too difficult to position. And we're just going to do everything based on quarter circle 1. So essentially, whatever I did for green, copy that down, and we're going to do that for red. There we go. Get rid of all this red stuff down here. Copy our color, just like that. And what I want to do is my right position is 178 pixels. I believe this is 90 pixels, not 100% sure. There we go. We want to make sure that we rotate it in the correct orientation. So it looks like it's going to be maybe, whoops, negative 50%. And that's not quite what we want. So we'll try, there we go, perfect, that's exactly what we want. And now we can specify exactly what the top value is going to be. Actually, we can just say the bottom is 0. And there we go, that's perfectly positioned at where we need, and we just need to change the size of it. So I'll come in here with my diff, 100 pixels, and actually, to make this a little bit more extendable, we'll just create a size variable, like 120 pixels, just like that. Get rid of all these values right here, same thing here. Size 178 pixels, get rid of this here. And then what we can do is all the way up here, width is going to be our size variable, height is also our size variable, and now it's just easier for us to position this element. So let's go ahead and actually say 115, 110. Okay, 110 is exactly the right size, and it looks like it's in the right position. There's a little bit of wiggling between the two, but it's pretty much exactly what I want. So now the next thing we want to work on is going to be our yellow one. So I'll copy this down. yellow, and this is yellow 1 because technically there's 2 yellow ones. I know it looks kind of weird, but really if you break this yellow shape up into 2 quarter circles, it's actually just straight up 2 quarter circles. So we'll say yellow 1, we'll have yellow 2, and then we're going to have black. There we go. So let's scroll all the way down to yellow 1. We know that for this one, the top value is going to be 0. So we can say top 0. The right value is going to be, or actually we don't even need to worry about right. We can just use left. Same thing with our red one. We could actually just use a left of 0, and it should put it in the exact same position. So this one has a left of 0, just like that. I want to get the correct color, which is this orange color. I don't know why I called it yellow, but it is orange. There we go. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure this is flipped in the correct direction, which actually requires no translates at all. And then all we need to do is just change the size of this. So this one's maybe like 80 pixels or something like that. Come into the diff here. Actually, we can calculate exactly what the size of this should be because we have 288 pixels tall minus our 110 should leave us with 78 pixels, if I'm correct in my math. Clearly, I'm not correct in my math. Something was wrong. So we have 178 pixels tall, so it should be 68 pixels here. There we go. That is the exact right size. So now we just want to work on yellow 2. So we'll copy this down. We'll come in here with yellow 2 and yellow 2. For this one, we're going to need to translate it probably by 50%. There we go. And I'm going to change my background color here to black just so we can see this particular shape. It's actually not even showing up for some reason. Make sure our size is a little bit bigger so we could see it. Maybe I typed something in wrong up here. Yellow 2, that is correct. Let's see, yellow 1, yellow 2, yellow 2, yellow 2. Let's get rid of the translate. Okay, so I think my problem is this should be a negative 50. There we go, that's all I needed to do. Now for our size on this one, again, we can actually do the math to figure out exactly what size this is. This is 178. This one is 68. So if we add that together, what is that? 246. Subtract it from here. So that leaves us with 42 pixels remaining. That should hopefully be the exact size, 42 pixels. And for our left value, we can make it 68 pixels. There we go. And that does fill in the exact spot we need it to. Let's just make it the right color. And there we go. That is exactly what we want. Now all we have to do is this very last shape, which is our black one. So we'll just copy everything for yellow, paste it down, black, and right here, that'll be black. Let me make sure my spacing is correct. There we go. So again, for this one, we want to translate in the exact same orientation we did for the other one, which is negative 50%. Our color here is just black. There we go. And our size for this one, again, we can do the math to calculate exactly what this particular size should be. So if we scroll all the way up for our total height was 178 minus the height of our red one is 110. That leaves us with 68 minus the height of our yellow one, which is 42. So that leaves us with 26, I believe. 26 pixels, just like that. And we know that our top is going to be, what was it, 42 pixels? Yeah, that was how tall that other one is. And for our left value, we essentially just, or actually let's do a right value because we know that's 178 pixels because that's essentially the width of our green thing right here. And that actually looks like it lines it up in the exact right spot where we need it. So let's just do a submit here and see if this works like we want it to. We should hopefully get 100% or really, really close because our pixel values might be off by just a little bit, but it does look like we get exactly 100%. Now this is a really good use case for trying different things. For example, I knew that this quarter circle technique would probably work pretty well the way that we did it with the boxes, but I also wanted to try it using the borders instead. And let's say, for example, you started with the border way of doing things and you realized that positioning things was really hard. Going ahead and thinking outside the box and trying a different technique is a really great way to say, okay, you know what? My technique is not working super well. Let me try a different one to see if that works. I knew that my quarter circle method I started with was working pretty well, but I thought, what if this other technique works better? I can spend 5 minutes trying it. If it doesn't work, okay, I just lost 5 minutes, not that big of a deal, but if it does work better, I may save myself hours in the future. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I have tons of other CSS battle videos. I'll link them right over here. And also, if you want to take your skills to the next level when it comes to CSS, I'm currently overhauling my entire CSS course. By the time you're watching this, it might already be entirely updated. So if you want to really master CSS, it doesn't matter if you know absolutely nothing or if you're relatively good at CSS, this course is going to be perfect for taking you from an absolute beginner all the way to an expert level CSS developer. I'll link it down in the description for you. And with that said, thank you very much for watching and have a good day.